do this to Scott, since he's right next to me. This is really a yes or no question in my mind, and is one of the most important things in the Board of Supervisors. Cities need businesses to survive. San Francisco has a reputation of being anti-business friendly. We need commerce activity to really fund most of our budget instead of down the backs of the taxpayers. Would you, in office, promise to us to support, reach out, learn from, and fight for small to large businesses in their plight?
We definitely, and the answer is yes, we definitely need to be much more proactive in not only attracting small and large businesses to San Francisco to build our job base, but supporting the businesses that we have here and doing things to help them create jobs. We need to reform our payroll tax. That doesn't mean cutting the payroll tax. It needs to be revenue neutral so we're not losing money. But right now the payroll tax is a significant disincentive for job creation, especially for small businesses, since once you hit the $250,000 payroll threshold, you go from paying no payroll tax to paying it retroactively at dollar number one. So I know small business owners who cut their hours, their employees' hours in December because they don't want to trigger that $250,000 threshold. So we need to reform the payroll tax in a revenue neutral way, and we need to be very proactive about attracting businesses to San Francisco.
Rafael, you want to?
I'd love to. This actually, I also have a question for Scott, which is the following. In today's Bay Guardian, there is a quote in which Scott says that we can't tax our way out of this mess, and people need to lower their expectations for government. And this is consistent with some of what you just said, and with your opposition to the increase in the hotel tax and the alcohol fee, even though we are facing a $500 million deficit next year. Given that San Franciscans are already facing declining community service, dirtier streets, more homeless and mentally ill and drug-addicted people on our sidewalks, closing rec centers, etc., do you really stand by the idea that San Franciscans should expect less from government?
Well, the Guardian, with all respect for my friends of the Guardian, they don't always accurately say what you said. What I said was, and what I mean is, and what I say today, is that taxing our way out of this cannot be the only solution, given the magnitude of our deficit and the cliff that the state keeps pushing us over. I support several revenue measures that are on this November's ballot. I support Prop N, the increase in the property transfer tax for properties over $5 million. I support the local vehicle license fee. I've supported other tax measures on the ballot in the past. I judge each tax measure on its merits. Property transfer tax increase, to me, is a good idea. The hotel tax is a bad idea. The hotel tax increase is a bad idea in a bad economy. So I'm someone who doesn't go into these situations in a dogmatic or ideological way to say no taxes ever, or I'm going to support every single tax that comes across my desk. I'm going to take it on a case-by-case basis, and there are taxes I do support.
Shake it up a little bit and ask Bill Hemenger, otherwise it's going to be the Rafael and Scott show, and that's kind of being at the board all the time. Bill, the bow's enough, Rafael, the bow's enough. Bill, what will you do to ensure, and I ask this too because this is San Francisco Young Democrats, a club that I was president of, and a club that is near and dear to my heart. What will you do to make sure that young people have affordable housing in the city?
Oh, great question. We're going to attract jobs and businesses here. We're going to streamline the permit process, redo the planning commission. We're going to instead of making San Francisco repeal businesses, We're going to invite them here. We're going to roll out the red carpet, and we're going to make them come here. We're going to get young people jobs. We're going to make San Francisco once again, an industry, a place where people can have jobs. We don't need it down on the peninsula. We need it here in San Francisco.
Scott?
I'm going to ask one of my friend Rafael Mandelman. Rafael, at the beginning, Melissa mentioned that you're endorsed by Supervisor Chris Daly. I recall several years ago you referring to yourself as a quote-unquote Chris Daly Democrat. And my question to you is, can you think of any issues over the last 5 years where you have disagreed with Chris Daly, and if so, what are they?
I disagree with Chris Daly on approach, and I'm sure that if I went through his voluminous legislative record, I would find many things that I would have amended or changed. I would only point out that although you have set yourself up as the champion of all who have been offended by Chris Daly over the last 10 years, in 2006, there was a credible candidate in District 6 running in that race. His name was Rod Black. And at that point, you decided, for whatever reason, that you would support Chris Daly's re-election. So the latter-day conversion to being Chris Daly's chief opponent is interesting to me. I'm not going to say it's politically motivated, but it's interesting.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Alrighty, before we head into break number 2, I have a question for the candidates, and let's go in reverse alphabetical order here. So, candidates, I would like each of you to name a law passed by the Board of Supervisors in the past year that you would not have voted for, and you can't have the same answer as anyone else. So, let's go backwards. Let's start with Scott.
In June, the Board of Supervisors put a ballot measure, a charter amendment, on the ballot to restructure the Film Commission and really take control away from the mayor, I think based on disagreement about the appointment of or the firing of an executive director. I opposed that. I was one of about 3 people of the Democratic County Central Committee who voted against it, and the voters voted it down. And I was against it, and I think that this shows 2 real dysfunctionalities in San Francisco city government. The first is that we tend to, based on some personality conflict or a disagreement with the mayor on one issue, start restructuring city government. We saw that a lot with Willie Brown, and people would get mad at Mayor Brown for something, and they put a charter amendment on to restructure a particular agency, and that's a terrible way of making policy. Also, when we start taking away or decentralizing executive management control in San Francisco of our various agencies, there are real downsides to doing that. It really makes it much harder to hold our politicians accountable when you don't know who's actually in charge. And so I was against it, and I'm glad that the voters agreed with me.
For me, it's Meatless Mondays. I think, I say it for the joke, but I also say it to illustrate the point that, every day we're all talking to voters at the farmers markets, knocking on doors, at muni stops, at parks, at dog parks, and people are really frustrated about the Board of Supervisors right now. They don't feel like the job that we are running to do, that we're doing. We're either not doing it because we're voting on something that is meaningless, or we're not doing it because we're doing it because of what Scott said, because we're doing it for a political agenda. And one of the things that I'm going to be very focused on is making sure that we are passing legislation that affects San Francisco and San Franciscans. It's like I've said in my literature, we will put San Francisco first. That's what the Board of Supervisors should be doing. No foreign policy statements, nothing like Meatless Mondays. We need to focus on getting our economy back on track in getting San Francisco back on track.
For me, I had been hoping that this fall, San Franciscans would have the opportunity to vote on real reform at Muni. There was a measure that was before the board that would have reformed the governance of the MTA and diminished the political influence on the MTA, that would have directed more resources to a system that is chronically underfunded, and the Board of Supervisors declined to bring that measure to the ballot. I am supporting the Muni reform that is on the ballot, but I think is a deeply flawed measure, and I think we could have done a lot better.
I don't know where to start, but I'll start with all the propositions that are on the ballot. We elect these people to go and make these laws and make these decisions for us, and here we're voting on all these propositions come November 2nd that I wish I could be answering, saying this one and this one and this one, but instead it's in our laps, in our ballot boxes that we have to do, and I think that's a shame.